Hey guys, it's Shaheer from 5 Academy. Welcome back to another video. So today what I'm going to be doing is taking you through 6 ACT English problem types, which make up more than 60% of the problems that you're going to see on the English exam. The English exam obviously has 75 questions, but a lot of them are actually the same problem type again and again, but just with different text or background, right? So if you can understand those problem types that are most repetitive, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up to answer a lot of questions right in the English test. Namely, with these problem types I've showed you here, about 60% of the questions correctly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just go through these. I recommend if you want, you can try these problems on your own beforehand, before you watch through the rest of the video. If not, well, let's get started. So the first problem type is choosing an appropriate word or phrase in terms of sentence content. And you can see it's quite common. It makes up about 12% of the entire English exam. So it shows up a lot. It's very important. Essentially what the question is going to ask you is it's going to give you a passage and it's going to put a little point letter A here somewhere after a certain sentence. And then the question is going to ask you, hey, at point A, which of the following is the most meaningful choice? Which of these sentences, if we added it in, is going to be the most meaningful addition? So okay, the question is, how do you assess which one's the most meaningful? It's very simple. It's a few steps that you got to do. First, understand what's being discussed in the few lines before that point and the few lines after, okay? Then look at each of the answer options and identify which one discusses most the idea before and the ideas after, okay? So which one's related actually in context to what's before and after point A. And then the answer option that has the most. If ideally, if there's an answer option that alludes to both of these subjects and ideas, then that should be the correct answer. Simple as that. Now, if there isn't one that talks about both ideas, identify the answer option that talks about, out of all the information here, the most of that information, okay? Very simple. Participial phrase fragments, this one makes up about 11%. Again, this is really just, a fragment is asking you about, it's an incomplete sentence. So for example, a fragment is, he walked to the period. That's a fragment because it's not a complete sentence. But he walked to the store is a complete sentence. Okay, so in this type of problem, you're going to just be identifying fragments and correcting them to be complete sentences. So in this case, no one saw the surprise birthday party coming. The same goes for even the coworkers. So which of the following would not be grammatical? Well, the original part looks grammatical. We have two independent clauses separated by a period. So it's grammatical. Coming and then not separated by a dash. So if I put this dash not, this is also grammatical because you can use a dash to separate an independent clause, which is what you have before, by a dependent clause, which is what you have after, okay? So this also works. Coming colon not is actually the exact same thing as be. You can use a dash and a colon in really the same way. And then as for, that leaves you with option D, which has to be the answer. You can't use a semicolon here because what is before and what's after the semicolon, they have to both be independent clauses. And if you write colon not even the coworkers, that's not an independent clause. So D creates an ungrammatical situation. It creates a fragment. Joining poorly connected clauses with punctuation. This is one that makes about 10 to 11% of the exam. What you're doing here is something very similar to what I just did above, but it'll be more broad than just fragments. So here, let's just go through the problem. There was only one thing left to do before leaving from home: putting the suitcases in the trunk. Okay, so it's asking which of these is going to be grammatical. Well, the way this is written, it actually aligns with what I did above with the dash. So I think A is the correct answer, the way it's written already. But let's still read through the others to show you kind of why they're wrong. As for B, okay, so if I replace this with a period, what happens is you end up having this right here. It's after the period, but it's not a complete sentence. A period has to separate two complete sentences. If any of these before or after is not complete, then B is wrong, which it is wrong. Putting the suitcases in the trunk is not a complete sentence. But if you said he is putting the suitcases in the trunk, or putting the suitcases in the trunk was difficult, that's a complete sentence. But this, underlined, is not complete. As for C, it's actually doing the same thing as B, but with a comma. And you can't just put a comma here because it's separating an independent clause with a dependent, but you need something between there to actually connect those two ideas, like a dash. You need something like a punctuation mark separating those ideas. If there was a transition word in here, then a comma would work, but this does not work. And then here, again, this is wrong because it's really the same issue as B. If you start a sentence with which, it's going to become a dependent clause. It's a subordinating conjunction. All right, moving on to deleting redundant and wordy material. It makes up about 10 to 11% of the exam. So it's, again, very common. This one is very simple. I'm not even going to go through this in depth. If you notice that what's underlined in the, if you see what's in the underlined portion was already discussed elsewhere in the passage, or if that idea was already explained somewhere else, you should just delete, okay? So in this case, the answer is going to be delete, because what's this saying? If you read through this, you'll find that what's discussed here is already covered by what's underlined here. We already know its importance because it says it's a major factor during installation. So that's that. Now, as for the other answer options, you'll notice they all say the same thing, but just with varying levels of words. Verb tense, voice, and pronoun person. Again, this is just about verb tense using the right present versus past versus future. Pronoun person is just about if you're talking about multiple people, you should use apostrophes and punctuation that represents multiple people or plurals, right? And then voice is just active versus passive. So let's go through an example. There were many members on the board and the votes of the members were tallied. So which of the following would not be acceptable? Well, this seems acceptable to say votes of the members, so that's fine. Members' votes, this is also correct because if you have a plural subject and you're doing a possessive against that subject, then you should put the apostrophe after the S in this case. So that's correct. That's going to be acceptable. The votes were tallied. That also is acceptable, although it's a little less descriptive. And then members' votes. If you notice, B and D try to do the exact same thing, but in D, the apostrophe is missing, which is why that is not going to be acceptable. That is the correct answer. Okay. I'm not going to go through these other examples. This one, I guess, had a high level. It's supposed to be printers, cartridges. Again, very similar to the example above. And then you also get examples like this where it's like whose versus whose, or its versus its, or their versus their. These type of problems also show up. So it's very important that you understand these skills. In this case, you need to use the possessive, not the who plus is. Last problem type, using a passage element to accomplish a specific purpose. This is going to make up 8% of the exam. So what's happening in these type of problems? It's going to give you a word and it's going to underline it. And then it's going to say, hey, which of these alternate answer options best emphasizes the spurred growth as a result of streetcars, or best emphasizes the combined risk and danger of working in the logging industry. So you need to read through each of these terms and identify which one kind of conveys that meaning. In the case of the first question, you're going to go with stimulated, and the second one hazardous, because a lot of the other words they're either repetitive, saying the same thing as the other answer options, or they just don't fit, right? Like, for example, encourage. I wouldn't say that streetcars encourage greater transit use. They stimulate it is a better way, because encourage is kind of a human trait. Restored and revived, they're the exact same thing, and they also imply that something was dead at a certain point, and before that it was more common. So again, I don't think that works well here. We don't really know that that's the intended meaning. And then the other question here goes through a very similar pattern process. Okay, that's how you do this. Again, I highly recommend, if you want to learn some of these skills, check out some of our other more in-depth videos. We have one that I will try to link down below. It's called 5-Minute Guide to ACT English Punctuation and 5-Minute Guide to ACT English Grammar. There are 2 videos there. You can check those out. And we also have a lot more content on our website. It is paid content that goes through each of these skills one by one in depth with dedicated problem sets and videos. Like these problems that you're seeing here, they are straight from our website. So if you want more problems like this that are skill focused, doing one skill at a time, kind of like Khan Academy, check out our website. It's linked down below. Without further ado, I think I will wrap up this one. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them down below or leave a question on our website. All right. See you in the next one.